and welcome to another episode of Israel Undiplomatic. I'm your host, Ruthie Blum, and I'm here in the JNS studio in Jerusalem. My co-host, Mark Regev, is abroad, so we are going to be doing this remotely. Hi, Mark.
How are you, Ruthie? We are in the middle of the Jewish holiday of Passover, and a lot of people in Israel are taking time off work, including us here at Israel Undiplomatic, and we are pre-recording this podcast. That's why we're wearing the same clothes we did last week. We're pre-recording this so the technical team at JNS can get the holiday they richly deserve.
Absolutely. And Mark, this week, we are going to do something unprecedented. Certainly it's unprecedented for me. This time, all we're going to talk about is good news. How about that? In honor of the holiday.
That's a change for you, Ruthie, and that's a change for our program where we often talk about the threats and what's happening and why we should be concerned and why we possibly should be worried. And this week, for the holidays, we're only going to share good news with you.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because you would think that in the middle of this horrible war that was started by Hamas on October 7th, 2023, we're now a year and a half into it, you would think that Israeli society would be down in the dumps, let's say. But lo and behold, the opposite is the case. So I'm going to start with the first item on the agenda. I've got three that I could think of. The first one is that there is a huge baby boom going on in Israel. There's a 10% increase in births at the end of 2024 as compared with the same period in 2023. And, somebody said, well, yes, wartime, there are baby booms, like World War II, there was a baby boom. Yes, that was after the war. There was a huge baby boom after World War II. That was when people emerged from the war, when they emerged and they were building the economy and they had optimism for the future. We're in the middle of a war and we have a baby boom. So what do you think about that?
I think it's very telling and very indicative of what's going on in Israel today. When someone decides to start a family or to expand a family and have more children or to have their first child, it is a sign that they want to grow, they want to expand, that they're confident in the future. And this Israeli baby boom, I think, is a sign of the confidence that there is in Israel for a better future. People are having babies, men. Israeli women will tell you Israeli men are not serious about having relationships. They don't want to commit. They want to have a good life. They want to get on in their careers. This is showing that Israeli men and women, of course, want to settle down, want to have children, want to build a future for the next generation. And I just want to add one thing before we go into this too much detail. But, some people say, oh, well, it's not really the regular Israelis because it's all either the Arab Israelis who have big families or the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim. No, it's regular Israelis. If in most Western countries, the growth rate is negative, all across Europe, the growth rate is negative, less than 2 people for a couple, yes? In Israel, amongst secular Tel Aviv Israelis, we have one of the highest birth rates in the Western world. Israel has one of the highest birth rates in the Western world. And I think and that it's gone up at this time of national crisis, yes, it's a sign that the Israeli people are strong. It's a sign that the Israeli people are confident about the future. And you could read the newspapers and think we're all depressed. Well, if we're having babies, something's going on right.
No, absolutely. In fact, we have the highest birth rate in the Western world of the OECD countries. And you're absolutely right. Even secular Israelis have lots of kids. It's not just religious families. It's true. You might know a religious family with 12 kids and a secular family that only has 5 kids, let's say, but it's still very high compared to other Western countries. Now, what's also interesting about this happening during the war is that, there are jokes being made about it because think of it. First of all, many, both men and women are doing reserve duty, have been in and out of Gaza and Lebanon, and there's a resumption of fighting in Gaza, etc. So what you could say is, I mean, all these husbands are off at war, and some of the wives as well. But those whose wives are at home with the children, there's been a lot of talk about how what a struggle it is to be managing without your husband home when you have a full-time job and you have all the children, and it's very hard to manage. So I'm just saying, I guess on furloughs, they find a way to manage. Some of them don't have many furloughs, here and there, maybe a weekend or in the middle of the week. So I think that you're absolutely right. It just shows that people are not disillusioned, whatever they say. You don't want to have a baby if you think you're bringing the baby into a terrible world and all of that. So that's one thing that is quite surprising.
I also think, let's be clear, and it affects people who are soldiers at the front, and it affects people like you and me who know people are soldiers at the front, but we're not ourselves serving because of age, because of whatever reason, yes? But I think someone who's sort of, frivolous about their life and just out to have a good time, I think something like the war makes you feel more serious about who you are, what your values are, what you want to do in this world of ours, yes? And the fact that people are voting to have more children, right? I think that's a sign, once again, that's a sign that Israelis love life. Israelis want life to succeed in this country. And once again, can I say we're voting with our wombs? You used to say we vote with our feet. Yeah, people vote with their feet when they decide to live. When you vote with your womb, when you say, I want to have a larger family or I want to start a family, that really is a vote of confidence in the future. And I think it's something we can celebrate.
Definitely, and especially since it seems to be against the going common wisdom, because, one thing Israelis like to do, like Jews, is complain, kvetch, things are so awful. And not just during wartime, it's a kind of a national pastime. But as you said, our behavior belies it. And that is what counts, is the behavior, as you said, voting with your womb. I like that expression. Okay, so the next topic that is also extraordinary, again, during this war, is that the World Happiness Report for 2025 came out just recently. And Israel is still in the top 10. Not only the top 10, it ranked 8th. Now, some people said, that's a drop from the previous year when we ranked 5th on the happiness index, global happiness index. Now, you could say, well, that's understandable because in the year that passed, you're talking about after October 7th, the country really was in a trauma, still is, but it's very traumatic. So it makes sense that the happiness would have dipped. But the fact that we're still so high in rankings in the world is extraordinary. And again, it shows you that what you're reading in the paper and what you see in the news, and you hear a lot of complaining or a lot of protesting and a lot of this, actually, Israelis are happy.
So I want to say something here, because this is an amazing story, okay? Because according to the World Happiness Index, which is put out under the United Nations. Now, if it was a survey put out by the World Zionist Organization or the UJA or some pro-Jewish group, you could say, oh, well, maybe it's the Israelis talking themselves up, yes, making propaganda for ourselves. But this is actually put out by a UN affiliate. And the UN, as Ruthie and me both know, is not known for saying nice things about Israel. And yet this world survey, once again affiliated to the United Nations, is saying Israel is the 8th happiest country on the planet, despite the war. And according to the UN, once again, we're not quoting the Israeli government, we're quoting the UN. Israelis are happier than Americans, than Canadians, than Australians, than Brits, than French, than Germans, than Italians. Israelis are the 8th happiest people on the planet. We're doing something right in this country. Now, I just want to explain to the viewers the methodology behind this survey. It's based on Gallup polling. They ask people a bunch of questions about their life and how they're living. And it's also based on objective data about life expectancy and disease and healthcare and so forth. And they use the same methodology every year to look at all the country members of the United Nations. And Israel is consistently a leader in happiness. And the truth is, if you walk down the street near where you live in Tel Aviv, Ruthie, people are happy. You see people happy. And we can discuss in a moment why we think Israelis are happy, but that they are happy and happier than all those countries I mentioned before. I mean, you'd think Australians, Australia used to be called the lucky country. They must be happier than Israelis. No, not according to the UN. You'd think the Canadians, oh, great country, yeah, open spaces, fresh air. No, Israelis are happier.
Well, there can be many reasons for that, but this also ties in, I suppose, to the birth rate, which is to say that Israelis feel that their lives have meaning. When you feel like you have meaning, that contributes, the word happy, it's a peculiar word because what does that mean? Are you happy all the time? Of course not. You can experience happiness. But whatever the criteria are on that index, there are a few different criteria, meaning the fact that Israelis consider their lives valuable, and I don't mean just that we value life, which we do and Judaism does, but that we acknowledge that just by virtue of living in Israel or having moved to Israel, they're doing something significant. And it's not just for selfish reasons or not just for economic reasons or whatever else it is, or not just because Israeli women are gorgeous and Israeli men are gorgeous, or there are great bars in Tel Aviv. All of that's true. But there is a sense of purpose, something larger than ourselves. And I think people who do have a sense of that, and that's true of people who believe in God and people who, of all religions, but I wasn't talking only about the religious aspect. I was talking about the psychological, spiritual, and sociological aspect of feeling that what you are doing means something, has purpose, and has a greater good, and is for the greater good.
First of all, I agree with that. I think Israelis tend to have a sense of purpose that might be absent in many other developed countries. But I think it's also a bit more than that, Ruthie. I think Israel is a hybrid of a traditional society with a modern democratic, liberal, plural society. And in Israel, family is very, very strong. In much of the developed world, family has become eroded. People see their parents twice a year on national holidays. In Israel, if you're secular or religious, you go to your parents on a Friday night, and you bring your partner. And, family structures are much stronger in Israel, and that provides a support network for people, a safety net for people. A family in Israel is very powerful, very strong, and in so doing, you're creating a protective system for your citizens. It's not just family. Community is very important in Israel. Whether you live on a kibbutz or in a city, a sense of community, very powerful in Israel. What is happening in many Western countries, people feel alone, they feel atomized, they feel part of themselves, and there's this whole big world out there. They don't feel have a section of a sense of identity with the community in Israel. We have family, and we have community. And then there's the third level, as we, go from family larger to community, is a sense that we are as Israelis, and we're proud to be Israelis. And we feel for each other, a sense of solidarity. Now, we can argue, and Israelis, we discuss it on the postcard, we have crazy arguments in Israel. We're polarized politically, but ultimately there's a sense of nationhood, of being the Jewish state, of being Israelis, of, we are struggling together through difficult times, but we're doing it together. And we, sometimes in the public debate, it doesn't come out. You just see the differences, you see the arguments, but there is a strong sense of national solidarity. So if someone living in the West can feel alone and can feel an atomized society and feel that, he doesn't have support networks and, In Israel, those support networks, family, community, national solidarity are all very, very, very strong.
Absolutely. Now, the third topic, cause for optimism, is a trickier one. And that is that it's about the economy. The forecast for Israel's economy is very, very bright, actually, despite what you hear here and there from, Fitch says, oh, we may have to lower your rating and all that. But actually, we have the forecast is very bright. We're doing better than the OECD countries and the Western world in general, or the world in general. Now, why did I say that's a trickier one? Because it is known that Israel has a great macro economy, and the microeconomy leaves something to be desired because of a lack of competition, because of monopolies, because of various factors, so that individual Israelis don't always feel that sense of affluence that the country actually has. Israel has weathered financial storms, global financial storms that no other country managed to do as well. And even the tariffs that Trump is imposing, actually, it's not going to affect Israel that much because for a variety of reasons, and we don't have to go into that. But what I'm saying is that the economy is doing well. And if we tackle the internal issues that, have to do with policy and, as I say, monopolies and price fixing and things like that, then every Israeli will feel that booming economy. So that's also surprising. Again, surprising during this war. It cost a fortune, this war. All right. And it cost people their livelihoods, and homes have to be rebuilt, and rockets were falling, streets had to be repaved and windows put back. Huge amounts of money the government had to spend on all of this, and for the soldiers and the reservists, etc., and the equipment. And still, the economy is strong.
I want to tell you a story. Before I left the government, one of my last positions, I was the Israeli ambassador in the United Kingdom from 2016 to 2020. And I think it was in 2017, 1 year after I showed up in Britain and presented my credentials to then Queen Elizabeth II, yes? There was a report put out, I think it was the World Bank, and they said that Israel had passed the United Kingdom in GDP per capita, which is, a very important economic statistic. The gross to domestic product, that's the size of the economy compared to the population. And we've got to remember, and those Israelis and people watching this show who know their history, we used to be a British colony, yes? There was a mandate. The British used to be our overlords. And Israel had to fight for its independence. The British didn't want us to become independent in 1948. We had to fight for our independence. And today, we are, according to GDP per capita, we are a more affluent country than the Brits themselves. And I think that was an interesting turning point. And the GDP per capita in Israel today is higher than France and Italy and countless other successful European countries. In the past, Ruthie, when Jews from Western countries made Aliyah, they decided to immigrate to Israel. They did so for ideological reasons, but they knew in many cases they had to lower their standard of living because they were going to a new country, a developing country, and so forth. Today, that's no longer true. Well, maybe it is for Americans, maybe it is for Germans, but for many, many Jewish communities across the planet, the standard of living in Israel is higher than what they have back at home. And this is, I believe, this is the ultimate manifestation of the success of the Zionist project. Who would have thought that we would have a higher GDP per capita than our former colonial masters, the British? And I would argue the following. In the 21st century, it's going to be a technological world. It's going to be innovation. It's going to be conceptual products. And this is where Israel leads. We discussed it 2 weeks ago, this Israeli company, Wiz, that was bought for $32 billion by Google. right? Amazing. In the middle of this war, the largest ever acquisition of an Israeli company, the largest acquisition, I think, by an American company ever of an Israeli of any company abroad. A huge, huge economic thing happening in the middle of this war that we're going through now. Now, that's a 32 billion vote of confidence in Israeli technology, in the Israeli economy, and in the future. And I think that there is every reason to believe that Israel will continue to succeed in the coming years because of our prowess in technology, in innovation, and so forth. We are uniquely positioned to succeed in the 21st century. And I think that should give us confidence, and that should give us hope, and then give us a belief that this country is going to continue to be a powerhouse of ideas, of products, of new technologies that will bring in the dollars, and we will continue to rise on the scale of GDP per capita. We will continue to make this country more successful.
I would say amen to that. And I will say that all those babies being born in this baby boom, they're going to be the ones leading in the fields of AI and all those fields you mentioned. We got a whole new generation. The hospital, the maternity wards are filled and they're entering. It is true. We can see very, very young children here master. I mean, that's true all over the world. But Israeli children, they are so up on every bit of technology. And by the way, this is going to be part of the education system as well, teaching AI in the classrooms so that we'll get ahead of it.
And this current generation of young Israelis, I'm not talking about the babies, I'm talking about the people just out of high school. Yeah, there was this talk, this is the TikTok generation, and they only care about themselves. And we've seen in this war a young generation of Israelis with a spirit of volunteerism, with bravery, who saw this crisis that erupted on October 7th. And how do you say in American baseball? They stood up to the plate and they grit their teeth. And it was amazing to see the young people in Israel. I know in my own family, people who are on holidays abroad, rushing back to volunteer for military service. It showed the strength of that younger generation of Israelis who felt obligated to protect their homes, to protect their families, to protect their communities, and to protect their country. And I really believe this country is coming out of this terrible crisis on top. And on this holiday, I think we could be thankful for that.
I agree. And that's why this generation has been dubbed the victory generation. It's very apt. And since Passover is really the celebration of freedom from bondage, I think that is what we can wish and hope for, that the hostages will be freed and that we will rescue them.
And this war ends with not only our enemies being defeated, but that we make peace with our other neighbors that want to live in peace with Israel, and that this country has greatly succeeded over its history, and it will continue to succeed in the decades to come.
Great. So just on that note, I would like to say that anyone who enjoyed this broadcast, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. And if you're still interested in registering for JNS's first International Policy Summit, it's taking place on April 27th and 28th. You can register on the banner on the YouTube video or at jns.org.
See you next week, Ruthie.
See you, Mark.